base ingredient we're going to use is chickpeas. So I've got here 2 cups of dry chickpeas. And I'm going to soak this in water overnight just to soften them up. So you need to add enough water to cover the chickpeas by about 1.5 inches or 2. And then just leave it to soak overnight. It's been 24 hours since we started soaking the chickpeas, and if you see now, they're nice and plump. They've absorbed enough water. They've almost doubled in size, and that's what we wanted to happen. We're going to be doing 3 dishes out of this chickpea, so I'm going to divide it roughly into 3 portions. So 2 portions are going to be boiled in a pressure cooker, and if you don't have a pressure cooker, you can use a normal pot. The pressure cooker just makes it much faster. So I'm just going to strain the water out. We don't need that soaking water. And 1 cup is going to be just as is for the falafel. Now I'm just going to top it off with water. All we need is enough water to cover the chickpeas by about 1 inch. We're just going to cover it up. So this pressure cooker works on a very simple principle. It gets heated up, you put a weight on top, this is the weight, and that builds the pressure up. Now if you're buying one of these pressure cookers, look for one which has one of these safety valves, because this will ensure it doesn't blow up in your face, and make sure you use the right weight at all points of time. If you don't have this, you can use an instant pot. Cook it as per the instructions on the pot. And if you don't have an instant pot, you can just use regular pot and just boil it for longer. So in a pressure cooker, this would take about half an hour. In the instant pot, about the same. But if you're boiling it over the stove, it takes about 2 hours. Right, so for our first course, we're doing a falafel. And for the falafel, we'll need a few ingredients. So we're going to need 1 cup of the soaked chickpeas. These are soaked but not cooked. Then we have a few mint leaves, a few stalks of parsley, 1 shallot, 2 cloves of garlic, cumin, coriander, and of course some salt. So we're going to just mince these things finely. The cilantro and the mint, we're going to mince it nice and fine. So we just give it a rough chop. We're going to smash the garlic. Just roughly chop the shallot. If you don't have a shallot, you can use onion, you can use so get rid of that root part, both sides. Close the couple of chickpeas. Cumin, coriander, and a nice generous helping of salt. You can add some pepper, you can add some other spices like maybe some chilies or some chili powder or paprika, all up to you. This is the bare requirements, and then we're just going to blend that into a nice little dough. That's more or less what it should look like. Now to roll it, you just wet your hand so that it doesn't stick to your hand, and then make a small little ball, nice and smooth. We're just going to make it like a small little cylinder. That's just going to be there. And we'll do a few more of those. You can make it in any shape you like. Some people like it like a ball, which is the more traditional shape, especially if you're deep frying it. I've also seen some people do it like a kind of a patty, like a burger patty. And that works great if you want to make like a vegan burger, or in this case a vegan slider. If it starts sticking to your hands, you just need to wet your hands again. I got my oven set to convect bake and it's at 400 Fahrenheit. I'm going to put this in for about 10 minutes to start with, and then we'll flip them over midway. So for this course, we're going to do a kind of a take on falafel with the red pepper puree. Line the bowl with some of that. Then we're going to drop in one of the falafels. We're going to surround it by that lovely cucumber, mint and cilantro chutney. A few drops here and there. And top it off with some fabulous tune. And then I'm going to finish with a little sprinkling of chopped mint. Alright, so next thing we're making is the pita bread. This is again an accompaniment for the hummus. So we're going to add in about 1 cup of flour. We're going to use about a pinch of salt. And we add 90 grams of water. And about a quarter teaspoon of yeast. So we're just going to knead this flour together with the water. Make it a nice smooth dough. So if you ever made bread, same principle. It's basically the same ingredients for any type of bread. It's just the way in which it's rolled and proofed that makes a difference. So you can also use a stand mixer. It's completely up to you. If you don't have a stand mixer, you can mix it by hand. You can use an electric mixer as well. I just prefer using my hands. I find it easier. Just keep kneading that till it's nice and smooth. Another method to do it is use one hand. Right, left, right. It's a good upper body workout. God knows I could use one. There you go. Nice big ball. Let it rest. So right now it's proofed. It's about doubled in size. It's been about an hour and a half. I'm just going to punch it out a bit. Now I'm going to divide that into 6 portions, should be good. This is one thing you should always have on hand, a bench scraper. Make these into little balls. So what you're going to do is you're just going to roll these out as flat as possible. That's how you make pita breads. With flour, flatten that on both sides. Using my trusty rolling pin. The trick with the rolling pin is to not put too much pressure. You're just gonna let the pin do the work while you just roll back and forth. So you want to get these as flat as you can. That way they puff up. So growing up, flatbread was one of our staples in India. We call them chapatis or parathas, and my mom and I used to make them every night. Okay, so that's thin enough for the first one. There we go, on the tray. The oven set at 450, and here we go the pita bread. We're going to set a timer for about 15 minutes. And what I suggest is just keep checking on them. The moment they fluff up, they're done. The next thing, we're going to make an accompaniment for the hummus, which is going to be the second course of the whole meal. So for this we require, main ingredient is the cauliflower, which we have here. You're going to need some apple cider vinegar, chili powder. You can use the Korean chili flakes or you can use Indian chili powder. We need some ground cloves, some ground cinnamon, some garlic powder, some ginger powder, turmeric, pepper, cumin, and salt. So I'm going to start by making a paste for the marination of the cauliflower. And I'm going to start with some salt. Add some pepper in there. Cumin. Then we use a little bit of turmeric. Ginger and garlic. So I like using the granulated garlic, but you can use garlic powder as well, it works the same. 1 teaspoon of garlic powder is roughly about 2 cloves of garlic. Chili powder. Cinnamon. Cloves. And we're going to add some liquid to that, so we're using apple cider vinegar. And let's just stir it up, make sure it forms a paste. So we're going to kind of rehydrate the garlic and the ginger and the chili and everything of that sort in the vinegar and make it a little bit of paste, and that will help coat the cauliflower. Now, you can add a pinch of sugar as well to this. You don't have to. Sugar doesn't really combat the spice in any way. It just balances the flavors out. And there we have it. That's the paste. Now we add the cauliflower to that. Now, I wouldn't recommend you handle this paste by hand. Or if you are going to handle it with your hands, use gloves, because it is spicy. And you could burn yourself if you touched your eye or your nose after you touch the space. Just make sure it's evenly coated. This should be marinated about an hour before we start cooking it. We're just gonna let it sit for a bit, covered in this paste. As you can see, it's not a lot of paste for the amount of cauliflower, so it's just gonna give a hint of that flavor, not enough to burn your face off. Alright, so now we're gonna do the final cook for the cauliflower. So I have a pan with about a tablespoon of oil. I used olive oil for this. It's heated up nice and warm. I'm going to add a shallot in there. And we're going to just fry that down till the shallot softens. Now this is just a little bit of textural contrast to the hummus. So when we serve it together, it'll be nice. Something different. A little pinch of salt just to help cook the onions, the shallots, and just make sure that they don't burn. That's my secret. Whenever I'm cooking garlic or shallots or anything of that sort, add a little bit of salt. That helps release some water from the garlic or shallot, and that way it doesn't burn as easily. Works especially well for garlic. Now we're looking for almost caramelized texture, or a softened but almost caramelized texture on the onions. So it's going to be a while, and you put it on a medium to low heat. We're looking for a slight browning on the edges. It's important to keep stirring it a bit so that it doesn't stay in one position for too long, because when it does that, it tends to burn faster. they're completely softened. You can see they're more malleable, you can call it that. So they've almost completely lost their crunch now. You can see a bit of caramelization happening around here. So at this point, you can add in the cauliflower now. I'm just going to fry this up until the cauliflower is done. Oh, it smells really good here. So the spice mix that I gave you is the spice mix that we use in Goa for sausages. We make our own kind of chorizo. It's based on a Portuguese chorizo, but it's much spicier and has a lot more vinegar in it. One of my favorite ways to eat hummus was with the fried green sausages, and I figured that we can try that with cauliflower instead and have a similar kind of a spicy, yet mild, yet crunchy, yet smooth mix. I want the cauliflower softened but not completely soft. I'm going to add in some vinegar now just to deglaze the pan. Just a little splash. Oh, that's strong. The nice part about this dish is that you can customize it the way you like it. So if you want to add more shallots, you can. If you want to add more cauliflower, you can. Completely up to you. You can take it to how far you want it to be cooked as well. If you like the crunch on the cauliflower, you can stop at this point now. If you want it a little softer, go a little longer. Yep, and that seems to be good for me. So I'm going to stop the cook right here. And you just leave it like that. That's the cauliflower. Alright, so now we're going to plate the next course, which is the hummus. And we start with a nice big dollop of hummus in the center. Well there. Let's put some cauliflower in the middle there. To finish off, I'm going to add a little bit of pomegranate molasses just for that touch of sweetness. If you don't have pomegranate molasses, you can add maybe maple syrup or something like that. We're going to start the main course of the 3-course meal, and that's going to be a chickpea ragu with penne. So we have sofrito, which is your basic celery, onion, carrots, and I've added a red pepper. And remember the garlic shoots that we saved when we made the toom? So those shoots are what I've used for this. Besides that, we need some thyme, some rosemary, 1 bay leaf, fresh parsley, salt, oregano and basil. Both are dried in this case because it's winter here in Canada. We have some nice penne, some tomato paste and sun-dried tomatoes, and the chickpeas. We start the ragu with a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. I'm just going to wait for that to warm up. So now that the olive oil has warmed up a bit, we're going to start with the sofrito. Now, the sofrito is what gives most of the food its flavor. So it's called the aromatics generally. And then you have some additional flavoring agents which are herbs. I'm just going to empty this whole bowl in there. Another thing I like doing when cooking is I like to add the salt right at the beginning. And this just helps the sofrito or the aromatics to release some water, and it keeps it cooking gently and not too hot. Just going to stir fry that a bit. So you wait generally for the aromatics to give out a nice cooked smell, like a caramelized smell, instead of the raw garlic and onion smell that you usually get when you first put stuff in the pan. We're just going to wait for that. Now for this, I've cut all the vegetables into a beurre because we want to serve the vegetables as is. We're not going to puree these as we usually do. So we're not going to blitz this in the blender or anything of that sort. So I like to keep them as fine and as small as possible. So this is called a beurre cut. If you're not comfortable doing this, you can just use a larger cut or larger dice and then puree them before you add the last part in. So now that we are more or less done and the sofrito is more or less cooked to where we want it to be, we're going to add in the rest of the herbs. We'll start with 1 bay leaf, a little pinch of rosemary, same with the thyme, about a teaspoon of oregano, and 1.5 teaspoons of basil. So when you're using dehydrated herbs, you generally put them in at the beginning of the cook so that they have time to rehydrate. But with fresh herbs, you put them in towards the end of the cook. Now you have to let your nose guide you. So once you smell all those herbs and spices and all the aromatics together, you're ready for the next step. Here we go. Let's add in the chickpeas now. So these are already cooked al dente, so they can go a little longer. Now I'm going to add in about 1.5 tablespoons of tomato paste, and this just adds to that umami flavor. Since we're not using any meat or cheese, which is usually what we add to pasta dishes to get that same flavor, we're going to use some tomato paste. What I like to do is I like to caramelize the tomato paste a little bit, so that way it adds the flavor in a lot of respects. The Maillard reaction, a little browning effect. If you want this a little spicy, you can add a chili or two. You see this dry bits that's sticking to the bottom of the pan? That's what I was going for. And this is quite important when you're doing vegan cooking because you have to build a lot more flavor than you would have to with meats in general. But the flavor that you're looking for is the umaminess, which is that savory flavor that you get from meat. That's the build-up we're looking for. So now I'm going to glaze with a little bit of balsamic vinegar. And we can finish off with lime if we need it at the end. That already smells good though. Now for the next part, I'm going to add a little water. You can add stock, vegan stock if you have any, but with the number of vegetables and herbs that are in there, you don't really need it. You can just use plain water, which is what I'm going to use. You can also flavor it with a little bit of white wine if you have it at hand. It gives a little acidity to the dish. You can also achieve that with a little bit of lime juice or lemon juice or some apple cider vinegar. So this is what your ragu is going to look like. You're going to let that come to a boil. Coming up to a boil, so I'm going to cover it. So that'll keep all the moisture in and let it cook longer and enhance the flavor. So it's been about 20 minutes now. It's time to check on the ragu. You can see the water is absorbed by the chickpeas. It's thickened up quite a bit. So we still want it a little thicker than this, just so that we have more flavor concentrated in it. So what we'll do now is we'll uncover it and let it cook uncovered for the rest of the cook. We're going to add in the last of our ingredients, which is the parsley and the sun-dried tomatoes. And the last thing we add in is the finely chopped parsley. And parsley, like I said before, is a very underrated herb. I find it gives a lot of flavor if you use it well. Last part of this dish is to boil the pasta. We got some water coming up to a boil. I'm going to add in about 2 teaspoons of salt to the water. And you're just going to wait for that to come up to a boil. You want a rolling boil. So rolling boil is when it continuously bubbles and bubbles and bubbles. Now that's a rolling boil. So now we add in our pasta. And we're just going to wait until it's cooked. Our pasta is finally done. So we're just going to move that from the pasta boiling pan into the pan in which we cook the ragu. And you can serve pasta separate and the peas separate. I just like mixing it all up together. And it helps the pasta absorb a little bit of the flavors from the sauce that you have here. You're going to add a little bit of that pasta water in, just to help emulsify. And then we're just going to stir all that up nicely and let the pasta cook a little more.